In the grim final days of April 1945, as the very foundations of the Third Reich crumbled beneath the weight of its own hubris, we step into the dark underbelly of history, the Führerbunker beneath Berlin. Here, in a reinforced haven carved out beneath the Reich Chancellery Gardens, a man responsible for unspeakable atrocities faced his final hours. As Soviet forces encircled the fading light of a once mighty empire, Adolf Hitler retreated into a claustrophobic abyss of fear, defiance, and tragic resolve. Within these 3,000 square feet of concrete and despair, life was marked not by the grandeur of victory, but by the stark realization of inevitable defeat. The bunker was once a symbol of power, outfitted with modern amenities such as heating, electricity, and water. Yet, in that bitter winter of 1945, these comforts did little to dispel the overwhelming sense of doom that permeated its corridors. As daylight waned outside, Hitler continued his daily routine, as if clinging to remnants of a power that was, even by his own hand, crumbling. Meetings with top military officers and close aides filled his days, each discussion steeped in the bitter irony of planning strategies long rendered futile. The walls of the bunker echoed with the voices of loyalists and skeptics alike, each man haunted by the dawning realization that the Nazi dream was disintegrating before their eyes. The atmosphere was oppressive. In these dimly lit passages, the contrast between the world outside, a city besieged, a war lost, and the unnaturally sterile world inside could not have been starker. With every passing hour, the bittersweet strains of hope mingled with despair, and the concept of victory transformed into a grotesque mirror, reflecting the failures of an archaic ideology. The heavy air inside the bunker was charged with whispered conversations about survival and the futility of continuing a desperate stand against inevitable forces. In this crucible of historical irony, a desperate personal decision was made that underscored the surreal nature of the final days. On April 29, 1945, amidst the gloom of the bunker, Hitler entered into a brief, somber marriage with Eva Braun, his longtime companion. This union, conducted in a small, dimly lit space devoid of celebration or promise, was not a moment of joy, but rather a bleak punctuation mark in the downfall of a regime. The wedding, marked by an almost ritualistic formality, served as a final symbolic union between the man and the myth he had cultivated. Yet even in that fleeting ceremony, the pervading sense of despair was unmistakable. The very act of marriage, often associated with beginnings and hope, was here twisted into a final act of defiance against a collapsing world order. Within the confines of the bunker, every minute carried the heavy burden of impending death. Hitler's entourage, consisting of devoted aides and soldiers clinging to fanatic loyalty, were witnesses to a surreal unfolding of events. They were caught in a web of conflicting emotions, loyalty, fear, and resignation intermingling in a space where time itself seemed to slow. These were not merely the final hours of a single man, but the closing chapter of a dark chapter in world history, set against a backdrop where human tragedy and historical inevitability met with devastating intimacy. The turning point came as the echoes of a doomed war reached a crescendo. As the Soviet forces tightened their grip around Berlin, Hitler's inner circle found themselves grappling with the realization that the illusion of control was irrevocably broken. In a dramatic and heart-wrenching sequence of events, the Führer took steps that sealed the fate of his own legacy. His actions, increasingly desperate, were punctuated by decisions that resonated with the grim finality of a collapsing world. In a chilling prelude to the ultimate act of self-destruction, Hitler, in a moment both absurd and terrifying, directed an ominous display of ruthlessness even towards the life that accompanied him. His beloved dog, Blondie, was subjected to a fatal test of cyanide capsules, a testament to the extreme measures committed in the bowels of a sinking regime. This act, blending cruelty with fatalistic resolve, underscored the warped logic that had become endemic in the final hours of a leader who had long lost touch with the human cost of his fanatical visions. Throughout this turbulent period, the bunker was a microcosm of despair. Those confined within its walls, including high-ranking officers and dedicated staff, were enveloped in an inescapable gloom. Every whispered conversation, every furtive glance, carried undercurrents of dread and resignation. Among these grim moments, the memory of routine, of meetings and strategizing, took on a dark irony. In the space where strategic plans were once drafted with ruthless precision, now lay the desperate planning of a man who understood that there could be no escape, no redemption for a tyranny irreparably broken. As the pressure mounted and the realization of unavoidable defeat became undeniable, the narrative reached its most harrowing climax on April 30th, 1945. Within the claustrophobic confines of the bunker, the final decisions were made. In a sequence that has since become seared into the annals of history, Hitler and Eva Braun chose to end their lives rather than face the relentless advance of Soviet forces. Their suicides were emblematic of a desperate bidding farewell, a final, irrevocable severance from a world that had long rejected them. In a chilling act that sealed their fate, Hitler shot himself, while Eva Braun ingested cyanide, marking a conclusive end to the dark tyranny that had cast a long shadow over the globe. In the aftermath of that fateful day, the remnants of the regime faced one last, haunting image. The bodies of Hitler and Eva Braun were carried to a secluded garden behind the Reich Chancellery. There, in an attempt to deny their enemies the trophy of a captured symbol, their remains were doused with petrol and set ablaze. Eyewitnesses later described the ghastly spectacle. Hitler's body, partially obscured by a blanket, yet unmistakable in its finality, burned away in a desperate bid to erase the physical legacy of his despotic rule. This act of destruction, as much about erasing memory as it was about the inevitability of collapse, symbolized the total annihilation of an idea that had once gripped the world in terror. As we retrace these events through archival records, dramatic reenactments, and compassionate expert commentary, we are reminded not only of the man who once wielded power over millions, but of the catastrophic downfall that serves as a stark warning for generations to come. The final hours spent in that underground labyrinth were not filled with heroic battles or glorious sacrifice. Rather, they were steeped in a suffocating despair that underscored the tragic end of an era. The inner circle's frantic measures, the hopelessness of every whispered command, and the heavy silence of resignation remain with us as one of history's most somber meditations on the cost of absolute power. The story of Hitler's last hours is more than a chronicle of the demise of a man. It is a narrative woven with the threads of human ambition, deep-seated fear, and the catastrophic consequences of unchecked ideology. In the fading light of the bunker, as alarms raged in the distance and the sounds of conflict encroached upon every wall, one truth emerged with unyielding clarity, that no regime, no matter how draped in grandeur, could escape the fate sown by its own hubris. This bitter reminder beckons us to reflect on the fragility of power and the dire consequences when humanity forsakes its moral compass. The story of those final days is an enduring lesson, a narrative fraught with isolation, despair, and a harrowing finality that remains etched in the collective memory of our world. Every careful decision, every frantic moment recorded in the annals of history compels us to confront the stark reality that pursuit of power without accountability eventually leads only to ruin. As the embers of a forsaken empire faded into the darkened night, the haunting silence left behind was a testament to both the destruction of a man and the collapse of an ideology. The ruin of the Führerbunker, with its chilling recollections of confined despair and defiant final acts, serves as an ever-present reminder that history, with all its painful lessons, demands that we remember the cost of tyranny in order to prevent its resurgence. Today, as historians sift through fragmented records and survivors recount memories steeped in sorrow, this story continues to resonate with profound implications. It challenges us to ask ourselves how we remember the past and how those memories shape our understanding of the present. In the devastation of that underground chamber, one can perceive the relentless march of history, the inevitable course of events that turns even the most formidable regimes into relics of a bygone era. The quiet final moments in the Führerbunker encapsulate not just a historical event, but a human tragedy, a dire narrative of how the pursuit of absolute power ultimately ends in isolation and despair. The relics of that time, from the melancholic wedding of Hitler and Eva Braun to the gruesome aftermath of their suicides, narrate a cautionary tale that reverberates through the corridors of time. Standing on the threshold of the present, with the lessons of the past beckoning us forward, we are reminded that even the darkest chapters of human history carry enduring truths. The story of Hitler's final hours, set against the backdrop of a collapsing regime, implores us to reflect on the enduring impact of those events on our modern world. It is a somber meditation on the end of an era, a testament to the fact that the fall of tyranny, however brutal, leaves behind a legacy of lessons that continue to shape our understanding of power, morality, and the human condition. Let us remember that history is not merely a collection of dates and events, but a powerful narrative that inspires us to seek truth and learn from past errors. As we turn the pages of this dark chapter, we are called upon to honor the memories of those who suffered, to question the legitimacy of unchecked power, and to strive for a world in which the tragedies of the past do not repeat themselves. Join us to uncover the hidden truths that reshaped history.